Hey y'all, welcome to another episode of THKD TV. I've been getting some great feedback from the few people that are watching these videos. They seem to enjoy them, so I thought I'd do another one for you. I've got a bunch of purchases, recent purchases to go through with you because I go to the record store way too much. One of these actually that I'm going to show you and be talking about was something I purchased directly from the band, but the rest of these I purchased at Dimple Records here in Sacramento. A bunch of good stuff to go through today. Hopefully some bands you haven't heard of. Definitely some you will have heard of, but hopefully some that you haven't as well. The first thing I'm going to be showing you, I actually bought this directly from the band, and this is the debut album from the Black Sorcery, and the album is called And the Beast Spake Death from Above. I actually did a review of this on my blog, a written review, but these guys are so awesome, and this album is really good, so I wanted to talk to you a little bit about it on video as well. These guys play what I would call bestial black death metal. I'd say Archgoat influenced, and also of course war metal bands such as Blasphemy definitely play a role in this. Canada has quite a knack for producing this type of black death metal in my opinion, but these guys really stand out. They definitely have that core sound, but they do things just a little bit different here and there to kind of stand out from the tons of bands that are doing this style now. In the vocal department especially, I love the vocals on this thing. They're like just these totally like guttural growls that you'd expect to hear on a brutal death metal or slam album as opposed to a blackened death metal album. So very cool, very different, yet somehow they make it work. There's some really experimental stuff happening on a couple of these tracks, such as Circling the Drain and Hellgeist, but the majority of them is just totally bulldozing black death metal hybrid stuff. You should definitely check this out. I got this directly from the band. I contacted them through their Facebook page and ordered it from them. And if you're in North America, I think that's probably the best way to get a copy of this. If you're not in North America, this album was released on Hammer of Damnation Records, so I would suggest going to their website and ordering it from them if you're not in North America. But otherwise, the band got this to me really super quick, and it was cheap, and they also threw in a cassette, which I have yet to listen to, by a different band called Thy Sepulchral Moon, but I'm excited to listen to that as well. And this is really good. This will probably end up on my top albums list. I can't imagine it not ending up there. But again, go ahead and check this out when you get a chance. Do it as soon as you can if you're a fan of that style of black and death metal. This is the Black Sorcery from Canada, and this album's called And the Beast Spake Death from Above. Definitely check it out when you have some time. The next thing I bought again, my local Dimple Records. It appears that somebody sold a whole collection there, and I love it when that happens because obviously, when somebody sells their collection, that's more for me. But I always wonder when somebody sells their collection why they do it. Is it because they've decided to put all the music on, they ripped it all onto a hard drive and they don't need the CDs anymore, they don't want them? Or does somebody just wake up one day and go, I don't think I'm ever going to listen to black metal anymore, I'm going to sell all these CDs? It just seems weird to me. I don't know, I guess. I like physical media, so maybe that's why it seems weird to me, because I'm old. But I can never understand why somebody sells an entire collection, but when they do and I stumble upon it, I get very excited. So I bought all these at Dimple Records, and most of them, actually all of them, were insanely cheap, like $5.99 to $2.99 range. I was very surprised at the pricing on these, so I ended up buying more than I probably normally would have because they were so goddamn cheap. First thing I'm going to show you here from that group of purchases is Horror of Bethlehem. This is a Texas band, and this is their second album. It's called Extinguishing the Light. When I saw this at the store, it caught my attention, obviously, because of the name Horror of Bethlehem. That is also the title of an Archgoat album. And I also remembered that Josh Armijo, who has a really awesome YouTube channel, did a review of this album and gave it quite a glowing review. So for as cheap as it was, I think I paid $2.99 for a copy of this. I had to check it out, and it is really, really fucking good. This came out last year. If it had come out this year, it would be on my top albums list for sure. But Horror Bethlehem, they play a, I would call it brutal death metal, but it has this black metal influence that makes it sound not quite like anything I've ever heard. Not really an Archgoat influence in spite of their name, but more like a more well-produced second wave black metal influence, like maybe like Satyricon or something of that nature. So they kind of add this like really dark, evil black metal influence to their brutal death metal framework, and again, that's kind of a combination you wouldn't expect to work, but they do a really good job with it. They make it sound really, really cool, and I've only listened to this a couple times since I bought it, but I really want to spend some more time with it. Maybe, I know it came out last year, but I'd still like to maybe do a written review of it, because these guys are obviously deserving of more attention. Definitely have been flying under my radar, and I think they, just based on a couple lessons I've had with this, I think they deserve more. Again, if you like brutal death metal, this is a great album to check out, and it's really got something different to say than your typical brutal death metal because of that black metal influence that's going on. So again, this is Horror Bethlehem. The album's called Extinguish the Light. This is their second album, or Extinguishing the Light, excuse me. This is their second album, and I'm going to have to track down their first one now, because this is super good, and you should definitely check it out. This is on Black Market Metal label, so I'm assuming you can order it from them, or I'm sure if you get in touch with the band, they can probably hook you up. This is really good. I bought this used, but if I had known how good this was, I easily would have bought it new from the band or from the label. It's awesome. Check it out. So now we move on to Sweden, and this is Todaslot, the debut album from Nastran. Nastran actually broke up, I think, back in 2016, but they were around for quite a while, and are probably one of the less well-known Swedish black metal bands. They don't get the attention that like Dissection or Marduk get. But I think they've done a lot of really cool stuff. This came out back in 1995, if that gives you any idea. So they've definitely been around, or they were around for a long time before they called it a day. I didn't own any of their stuff, so I was excited to find their debut album for ridiculously cheap. This is what you'd expect, very traditional Swedish black metal, very atmospheric. What I really like about this album is the way they use synthesizers. It's just something a little bit different than you typically hear on black metal that includes synths, and I need to spend more time with this, but I really like it so far, so I'm glad I found it. Glad Nastran was one of those bands I've been wanting to check out but never got around to, so finding their album for so cheap gave me a good excuse to do that, so I'm glad I picked this up. That's Nastran, and this is their debut album, Todaslot. Sticking with Sweden, next thing I bought was Niflheim, Servants of Darkness. Now, Niflheim is a band well known to me, and I'm sure well known to you. Swedish black thrash metal. I absolutely worship these guys' first two albums. I've had them on CD forever, but I never really ventured beyond those first two albums for whatever reason. And again, it's just one of those things where you get stuck on a certain era of a band or certain albums from a band, and for whatever reason you don't bother to continue. I don't know why that is, but that's kind of what happened for me with these guys. But found Servants of Darkness here for super cheap. I think this was $2.99 used, and it's excellent. I would say it's just as good as their first two albums. And if you're not familiar with Niflheim, if you like black thrash, these are probably one of the best black thrash metal bands out there. Right up there with any of the bands from Australia, like Destroyer 666 and all the offshoot bands from them. So definitely worth checking out. I would recommend starting with their first two albums before this one, but what I've listened to so far, this one's really good, and definitely worth checking out. Up next, we move on to Greece with Varathron, His Majesty at the Swamp, and this is Varathron's debut album. Again, this was another band that I've been wanting to check out for a long time, but never got around to. And then finding this for like $5.99 was like, well, now you don't have any excuse not to check them out. And Varathron play Greek black metal, very similar to early Rotting Christ, very atmospheric. There's just something about that Greek sound. It's got its own X factor that's hard to put into words. This is a really cool album. The only thing I'm not crazy about on this, when I've listened what I've listened to it so far, is that they used a drum machine instead of a live drummer. And you know, it's not that I'm against drum machines. I think drum machines work very well for some bands, but this, I don't know, the drums are so mechanical sounding and the guitar work is so atmospheric that it kind of clashes for me a little bit. I still think it's a cool album, and I think I probably just need to listen to it more, but certainly this is a classic of Greek black metal, and Varathron, they should be mentioned in the same breath as Rotting Christ and some of the other more well-known bands from that scene, but they don't quite get the same recognition. That seems to be the theme running through my purchases here, is bands from well-known scenes that don't quite get the recognition of some of the more well-known bands. But Varathron is Majesty of the Swamp. This I don't believe is a first press. I think it had a different. I think this had a different cover art and stuff. But this is well worth checking out. You know, if you're one of those anti-drum machine people, don't let that stop you, because the guitar work on this is really cool. And if you like atmospheric, kind of slow to mid-paced black metal, this is definitely still a really cool album. You know, don't let that drum machine sway you from enjoying this, because I think it's well worth listening to, and I'm glad I found it. All right, before we continue, I've got to ask, are y'all ready for sketch? Because we're about to move into the portion of the video where I talk about some bands that some people consider sketchy, and I just want to forewarn you, you know, I don't give a shit what people in a band, what their beliefs are or what they do outside of the band. I'm just interested in the music. So some of these bands you may not care to hear about, and if that's the case, you know, you can stop the video now, or you can wait till I start talking about them and see how you feel. But I just wanted to clear the air and say, hey, we're moving into the sketchy portion of this video. So up first, hailing from Poland, we have Bellus. This CD has both of their albums on it. Night on the Bear Mountain and Black Hateful Metal. Bellus is probably best known for being a project involving Rob Darkin from Graveland. On Metal Archives, he's listed only as a session member, but he appears on all their recordings, as far as I know. So I'm not sure exactly why that is, but this, you know, if you're familiar with early Graveland, then you know what Bellus sounds like. It's that very primitive, excuse me, very primitive sounding traditional black metal, with heavy use of keyboards, and of course Rob Darkin is the keyboardist on both these albums, and as I said, I think he's on all the Bellus recordings. I don't believe this band's around anymore. I don't recall if they've released any other full lengths beyond this. I know they have some splits and stuff out there, but this was on No Colors Records, and like as I mentioned earlier, it contains both their albums. If you're a fan of that primitive style of black metal, that especially like early Graveland, then you should probably check this one out. If you're not a fan of sketchy black metal, then maybe don't. So far, I really like this. It's got that same sort of primitive, amateurish charm that, again, I keep referring to early Graveland, but, I mean, that's the best comparison there is, and that's what this sounds like. So, it's got that same kind of charming amateurishness to it. It's very, very dark, very primitive, and just a good album to listen to when it gets cold out, I think. So I'm excited to spend more time with this, because, again, like, I mean, you've got, like, over an hour worth of material here to kind of sift through, and was excited to find this. So Bellus, Black Hateful Metal, and Night on Bear Mountain, two albums on one disc. Pretty cool stuff. Next up is another Graveland related project. This is Infernum. The album is called Tar Nu Fuin, and I'm probably butchering the pronunciation of it, but This is another Polish black metal band. This band involved Capricornus and Rob Darkin, both from Graveland, and of course Capricornus was also in a couple other bands. He had a solo band, Capricornus, and then also a band called Thor's Hammer. I feel like he was involved in some other bands, but off the top of my head, I can't remember. Sorry, I'm not a walking metal archive, so forgive me on that. But again, this is another album that pretty much sounds just like early Graveland. It's got the sort of primitive, the primitive charm of early Graveland, and very keyboard heavy, very shitty production, which seems to be those early black metal albums by Infernum, Bellus, Graveland, Thor's Hammer. They were all very primitively played and very primitively produced, but there's something just charming about them because of it. I really like the rawness of these albums, and I think that'd be actually a pretty interesting, maybe a blog post or something about that early Polish scene, because very interesting as far as the characters involved in that scene and the really good music that came out of it. I know at one point, and I forget I'm sorry, I'd have to look here and see, because I can't remember the guy's name, but and there's no credits in this, so maybe I won't be able to tell you. I guess not. Well, there's no credits in this, but anyway, at one point there were two Infernums because Darkin and Capricornus split from the main guy, whose name escapes me off the top of my head. They went on and put out an album that I haven't been able to track down yet, but so there was two Infernums, this one, and then the Rob Darkin and Capricornus version. Then the main guy from this Infernum passed away, and they came back and they made a posthumous album with some of his material called Farewell, which I also have and is also quite good. Need to spend a little more time with this one. I haven't really gone through it as thoroughly as I'd like to, but again, if you like that early Polish style of black metal, this is a good one to check out, as is their other album, Farewell. Again, I haven't heard the album that the Capricornus and Infernum split version the other Infernum put out, but the two albums from this Infernum are quite good and worth hearing. Lastly, one of the more infamous bands in the Finnish scene, we have Satanic Warmaster, and this is Fimbulwinter. This was their most recent full length, and I actually reviewed a digital promo of this on my blog, and it was one of my favorite albums to come out that year. I think this came out in, God, what year did this come out? 2015 maybe? 2016? I don't remember. But anyway, really good album. Liked this a lot more than the previous Satanic Warmaster album. This one just had a much better production, I think better songwriting on it, and more interesting songwriting. He does a lot of cool stuff with synths and what have you on this one. There's a bit of a dungeon synth vibe in some of the interludes and some of the songs and what have you. And plus just some really good riffs. This one is more akin to Corellian Satanist Madness, in my opinion, which is probably his best album. But this one for me is right up there. I really like this one. Everything about it's perfect. It's just a great Finnish black metal album altogether. And if you haven't heard Satanic Warmaster, if you're not afraid of a little sketch, definitely check them out. In my opinion, they're probably the best Finnish black metal band. I have most of their discography, but not all of it. Working on it, but not all of it. And again, I had a digital promo of this that I used for my review, but I didn't have a physical copy, so I was excited to find this for super cheap. Satanic Warmaster's been around forever. Whenever I see something of theirs I don't have, I try to snag it. So very happy to find this, very happy to continue with my Satanic Warmaster collection, since I do have most of their stuff. But if you haven't heard these guys are probably like the ultimate Finnish black metal band. The Finnish black metal band. Very icy tremolo riffs and what have you. Really harsh, raspy vocals. This band's got it all. They're one of the best examples of Finnish black metal, in my opinion. And the song, like I said, the songwriting on this album is top notch. It's far better than the last one, which I can't even remember the name of, to be honest with you. But like I said, it's closer to Corellian Satanist Madness, which is their best album in my opinion. So definitely, if you're into finished black metal, if you're into Satanic Warmaster, get yourself a copy of this one. I was very excited to find a physical copy of it. So that is all the purchases I have to share with you this time around. Like I said, I go to the record store way too much, so hopefully there will be more of these in the near future. Certainly, if you want to talk about any of these or any other videos I've put out, I don't open up the comments on my YouTube videos because I don't like trolls, and quite frankly, I just find a lot of the comment sections online to be quite toxic. You're definitely welcome to contact me through the blog. I'd love to talk with readers and people who watch my videos. I just don't like comment sections. For the most part, I think they're bullshit. So get at me on the THKD Facebook page or the THKD discussion group, which is on Facebook. There's only a handful of members right now, but I'd love for more people to join. Hit me up by email through the contact page on the THKD blog. I'd love to talk with you, or on social media. You can hit me up on Twitter, what have you. Again, love to interact with people that watch my videos and read my stuff. And also, if you read one of my blog posts or you watch one of my videos and you like what you read or what you see, I just ask that you please share it on social media. It's so hard to get people to pay attention to Facebook posts or what have you. I put up, my Facebook page for THKD has like 800 or so 800 or so likes, but every time I put up a post, maybe if I'm lucky, maybe 100 people see it. Usually it's way less than that. So again, I would ask that if you like THKD, if you like the content, do please feel free to put the word out there, because I'd love to interact with more people. I enjoy talking about metal. I do this because nobody's willing to invite me onto their podcast. So it is what it is. But anyway, if you like what you see or what you read on THKD, do please share it, spread the word. I'm always very grateful. And if you ever want to talk metal, hit me up on Facebook or hit me up through the contact page on our blog, or hit me up on Twitter. Thanks, y'all.